Welcome into another episode of Cap and Trade. I am your host, Texans Cap. You can follow me on Twitter at Texans Cap, or if you prefer the written form, capandtrade.substack.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, jam that like button down below. It helps everything out, it helps the channel out, and continue to grow and make this a better thing. No live show tonight. Did have some family plans; those fell through, but still want to get a few thoughts up on the channel, especially with all the news that came out of the combine today. Especially with the big news that hit, as everybody is well aware, is Jalen Carter. Um, big news with him. Just a horrific situation, that occurred back in January, but that's just it's a really bad situation. And there's those fatalities, street racing, whatever may have happened. I'm not gonna try to guess into the details of that, but it does change the makeup of the draft board and how things are going to slot and how players are going to fall into those slots. Jalen Carter was, by most accounts, probably the best player, the best prospect in this draft. And there was a very good chance that he could go as high as first overall to Chicago, maybe second to Houston, or third. He was going to go more than likely going to be a top 4 draft pick at a minimum. And this news just really shifts things around. Now teams are going to be working hard over the next month and a half trying to get all the details they can and try to figure out, what is that really true at stake here with Jalen Carter. At this point, we don't know if it's going to be a Laramie Tunsil type of slide, sliding 3 or 4 spots back, or if it's going to be a Lyle Collins situation where he just comes off the board almost for every single team. It's probably somewhere in between there, but we'll have to wait until the details come out. But this just really changes things up big time. And I think the team that is hurt the most by this is going to be Chicago. Now, I say that from an aspect of, majority of people think that they're going to trade down. And this really, I think, kind of hurts their ability to trade down. Now this leaves them Will Anderson, and then or they drop down and take a Tyree Wilson or somebody like that, who's maybe not in quite the level of Will Anderson or Jalen Carter at that point. So it leaves them just one prospect, right? And then Houston's sitting right there at 1.02. It puts them in a very good spot where they probably don't need to trade up now, unless a team is willing to leapfrog them and go up to number 1. Maybe Indy, maybe Carolina, and I'll get to them here in a minute. But I really feel like this puts Houston in a more comfortable situation. I don't think this puts as much onus or need for them to have to move up to 1.01 to get the player that they want, if it is a quarterback and that's who they want. But we kind of almost heard it in Casario's comments yesterday. I feel like he was kind of negotiating with Ryan Poles in the media, right? They were kind of, Poles was saying that, they're going to look at the quarterback class, they'll make the right moves for the right teams. And then you got Casario talking about draft charts and how certain teams have certain charts and certain values, and how do you communicate that? How do you get on the same page to have an equitable trade package between both sides? So it just kind of felt like that was kind of an unspoken dialogue between those two sides. But the more and more you watch, we saw D'Amico Ryan speak today, and the more and more you watch Casario speak and you watch D'Amico speak, it really starts to paint a little bit of a picture. Maybe they're not sold on a quarterback at 1.02, and it begs the question, do you go with a rookie quarterback or do you go with a veteran bridge type quarterback? Nothing to do with Davis Mills. You keep him on the roster. That's still a very good asset to have, but it brings the question in, like, if Chicago goes Will Anderson at 1.01, what quarterback is on Houston's board to stay at 1.02? I've been a big Bryce Young fan. I've voiced that many, many times. I would love to see Houston take Bryce Young at 1.02. But if they're not sold on him, and we'll probably get a better idea of this come free agency, in about 2 weeks. But if they go out and sign Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, maybe that means they're not looking to go with somebody like Bryce Young. Maybe it's more of an Anthony Richardson type situation, or it's a situation where this is our guy. Davis Mills is the backup. We've heard D'Amico and Caserio both say that they want to add two quarterbacks to the roster, whether it's through the draft or free agency and or whichever way. So maybe that means they go to a veteran type quarterback situation, draft another quarterback in day 2, day 3, or maybe you grab an Anthony Richardson type at pick 12 or something like that. Hey, I'm good with whatever they want to do. I'm not going to question which one's the better prospect for this team. But the way the wording is coming out today, the way things are being handled, it really makes me wonder, is there viability that they go with the quarterback at 1.02, or maybe they trade out of that spot? And nothing would surprise me at this point. And so I think the strategy at this point is to kind of have to watch the places behind you, right? I think Arizona is going to be big time in the driver's seat. I think they came out of this in a very, very good situation with the Jalen Carter situation. With that news coming out, I think this really puts Arizona in the driver's seat, because if Houston's dead set on Bryce Young and they can get him at 1.02, we don't know what Indy or Carolina is looking for in a quarterback. Now, we all expect that Indy would stick with a CJ Stroud, Will Levis type quarterback that has more traits, size traits, things like that, versus going with Bryce Young. So I'm not entirely convinced that Carolina or Indianapolis would be in on Bryce Young. So it makes me wonder, like, now you watch and wait and kind of try to figure out what's going to happen behind you at 1.03, 1.04. And then Carolina, I think, is at pick 7. One thing I would keep an eye out on is Carolina jumping up to trading up with Arizona to the 3rd spot. I really think they have their eyes on CJ Stroud. Just if I had to guess, and based on some folks that chatting with who's at the combine now, just kind of what's being presented around as a rumor. And these things, the NFL's fluid. Things change. I can say this tonight, and 2 days from now, situation is completely different. And free agency is going to play a big role in that. But when you see Carolina and the news coming out that they're going back to Sam Darnold, looking at him for an extension, he's going to be a free agent come March. Are they looking to sign Sam Darnold back as a bridge option so that they can draft a CJ Stroud type player and let them compete out for the number 1 starting spot week 1? That's just kind of one thing to kind of look at here. And so Arizona could be very well in a very, very, very strong negotiating position, because if Indianapolis wants CJ Stroud, which I think is a very real possibility, they have to prevent Carolina from jumping over them into 3 to getting Stroud. Now, we heard Chris Ballard say today that, can he trade up for a quarterback to number 1 or whatever spot he needs to trade to? Sure. But it has to be a player that is worth it. So what does that mean? It's hard to know. I mean, these teams, this is coach speak, GM speak, line season, mirrors, smoke and mirrors, whatever you want to call it. But the crux of the situation is the Jalen Carter situation. If he slides down the board like some think he will, he might come off of some teams' boards altogether. Houston's in a completely different situation now. Chicago trading out of the number 1 overall. Just, I think, for me, I wasn't a big proponent of it. I didn't think they had a whole lot of leverage to begin with. I think this just hurts them more. So you got Chicago probably hurt. It's going to have to stay at 1.01. So do they go with Will Anderson, something like that? Then you got to look at Houston. it sets up perfectly for them if they end up wanting to go with Bryce Young at 1.02. But maybe they go with a bridge, veteran type quarterback player and reset for 2024 and use these picks to continue building out this roster. This roster has so many needs across the board. There's maybe two positions on this roster that are in decent or that are in good shape. Maybe the offensive tackles is probably the one position that everybody feels comfortable with. So, if they go with a veteran type quarterback and they trade out of the second slot or something like that, or they just pick up a very, very quality player at 1.02, then that's, hey, that's great. And then they can figure out what they need to do at pick number 12, whether it's a trade back or maybe they move up from 12 a few spots to get another high impact defensive player, because there's going to be that run on edge players early. And then there's, this is a very deep class when it comes to like tight end, cornerback. There's some really good linebackers. So, if he needs to move back from 12, it just to me, that news today just really shuffles up the board, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. But other than that, I mean, I just wanted to kind of get some quick thoughts on that. I really think this really hurts Chicago. This really helps Arizona. Houston's stuck right in the middle of it, and it just depends on who they want and who they value. If they value Bryce Young, great. If they don't, who am I to argue? And we'll see what they end up doing. But, to me, this makes things a little bit easier for them if they end up wanting to go with one of the quarterbacks, whether it's Bryce Young or somebody else. This puts them in a very prime position to get that quarterback without having to utilize additional draft assets. So, that's just kind of some quick thoughts on the matter. The combine's for another 5 days. So it's going to be craziness going on. So keep it pinned to your social medias and watch the news as we'll be doing the same thing as you, because I'm obviously not there. And it'll be fun to watch. And so we got some good content coming up on the show the next few days. I'm going to try to do a live contract building session for Tremaine Edmonds. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. The linebacker out of Buffalo. I put up a poll on Twitter a couple days ago to see what player y'all wanted to do a contract building session on. And Edmonds received the top vote. So we'll try to look at that. He'll be a very highly paid linebacker, probably the second or third highest paid linebacker, off-ball linebacker in the game. So, we'll take a look at that. And then Sunday night, we're going to have Aaron Wilson, who is in Indianapolis for the combine. He will have been there all week. He's coming back, I believe, late Friday night. So we'll get his thoughts and opinion on what all went down at the combine, what he's hearing, what free agents might be on Houston's radar, what might be happening in terms of draft, and how Houston's going to navigate that situation. So, just a lot of good content coming up. So keep your pin to the channel. Make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe to the channel to get your notifications set up. And with that, we will shut it down and we will see you next time. Thank you.